Hey, hey, hi, Crunk Chocolate here. And I know normally when I'm popping up this time, it's like a match preview or something like that. You know, it's kind of vibes today. This is nice. This is relaxing. We are introducing a new person to the Shady Gang family. I have seen his posts pop up at the beginning of the NWL season, just like some stats. And I was just like, okay, this is cool because this is new, and I don't see much like stat pushing in WSL. This is great, and then all of a sudden, boom, I'm seeing him more and more, and people I know starting to share his posts. And I then checked his bio, and it was like, hey, I do podcast features, say less. So I messaged him. It's been a great conversation. Conversations through email. That I love that. I don't do it too often, so it's nice. Shady Gang, please give it up for, if you know him on Twitter X, it's Statarino. You'll see his stats. Shady Gang, please give it up for Sam. How's it going, friend? How's it going?
Thank you very much. Lovely intro.
Yes. Yeah, truly. Thank you for coming on. I am super excited to get to know you, Shady Gang to get to know you, and talk some numbers, get nice and nerdy. One of my show bros, Sharpie Charlie, like that was his big thing when we had a conversation. I was like, what's your big thing? And it was like stats, numbers. I love that stuff because people can say what they want about what they see and how they feel, like an eye test, but the numbers are the numbers, and obviously people can take them for what they are and everything and build from there. But honestly, I love it. So this is a great chance to get to know you, like I said.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, I think I'm obviously very much in the same bracket of that I'm very much into the numbers and things on that side of the game. I think you can't just use the numbers. You need that sort of eye
Yes.
test just to be able to truly know what's going on. But yeah, the numbers can definitely tell a good story alongside it.
Exactly. And especially in women's football, there are a lot of things that is missing when it comes to the men's as well. So not missing, but there are a lot of things that you see all the time in men's football that you don't see so much in women's. And it's small things like these like stats, and they're like super stats, and they're very specific, and they're per 90. And those are the things that I love because that's time and attention being given to the women, which unfortunately that doesn't happen too often. There are like apps where I'll try to see the Man City lineup because for some reason when the lineup in general is shared on social media, it's numerical, not by like position and formation and stuff. So I'll be like, okay, cool. Let me go to One Football or something, and it'll be like, hey, don't have the lineups for you quite yet. And it's frustrating. And that's half the reason why we focus on the women's game. The reason why honestly, our show starts with City Women is because we just know how important it is to pay them attention, give them energy, support women's football and all that stuff. But let's start chatting with you, introducing you, letting us get to know you. So let's start here, something simple. Who is Sam? And is there a football club that you root for? And if so, like, who is it and how did you become a fan of them?
Yeah, so Sam is in his late 20s. He's from England. So hence is going to refer to it as football throughout the whole thing
We
tonight.
do too. Yeah, no worries.
We'll work it out. Not on purpose, not because I don't like the word soccer, just because I'm just so used to it. But yeah, so I sort of have two teams that I support. The main team I'd probably say is my home club, which is Peterborough United. We're in League One's like the third tier of football here in England.
Yeah.
But I've also, since I was about maybe like 4, also supported Arsenal. So probably say they're my sort of, for famous teams, they're the ones that I go to. So, it's not been a great night for me tonight with the men losing in the Champions League, but we move on from that.
I guess I should have read that a little bit better when you were like, hey, I'm watching Champions League football. And then I naturally go on, I'm like, ha ha ha, Arsenal lost. Yeah, baby.
Yeah, they have.
Right before we go live, it's just like, yeah, that's a great way to break ice to the person I'm meeting for the first time.
That is right. You answered it.
Oh man, it's all the respect to Arsenal, but you know how it is. Y'all are now starting to get into our space, so it's like I root for you because in the Champions League because it's another English squad, but that's kind of I guess where it ends. It's like I want you to succeed and obviously represent England well, but just move out of our way. Best of luck, but not the best of luck.
Yeah, as long as we don't get any further than Man City, basically, you're still supporting.
So you do get it.
Yeah, I understand. Because I'm the same back. I like Man City doing well. It does well for like the coefficient for England, so we get more teams in the Champions League. But I don't need to win it again.
And then now we have Newcastle, right? Newcastle and United messing it up for us. Goodness gracious.
Yeah,
Manchester United and Newcastle, yeah. Both Uniteds. All the Uniteds ruin it for us. Okay, well then, because there's so many clubs in London, what would your favorite derby be? Is it one that is for Arsenal, or is there a Peterborough derby that hits you a little bit closer? And if so, tell me about that.
Yeah, so Peterborough, we do have a derby against a team called Cambridge United, who are about 45 minutes away. They're sort of the next closest big city. We don't play them all that often just because we've tended to be in Championship and League One, so sort of second, third tier. Cambridge always tend to be a league or two below. So we haven't played them sometime until the last couple of years where we've been in the same league, but that's normally, good fun to go to. But at a higher level, the North London derby, Arsenal Spurs, is a great one. I always enjoy it. I've never been to one, but I always enjoy watching it on TV. I think my favourite derby internationally is probably actually AC and Inter. That's one that's always really sort of intrigued me. I sort of grew up watching football a lot in sort of the noughties, so saw a lot of the players like Seedorf and Shevchenko and players like that against Inter sides with Samuel and Eto'o and that kind of player. So the AC and Inter sharing a stadium that neither of them own and things like that, and just having such rivalry at the top of the game in another country, I've always found really good, really interesting. And just some of the players, not necessarily nowadays, but especially 15 years ago. So some of the players were great. Yeah, they're probably my favourite derbies, either the Milan derby or North London.
Can't go wrong with the Milan derby, honestly. Okay, well then let's sit here in your Arsenalness for a little bit before we get into the stats and the numbers. How are you feeling about the season? They're in a similar space as they were last year. Obviously, you led for a good chunk of the season, but I feel like you're in a better position because last year it always felt inevitable. Like City were going to come back, and now it's kind of like a 3-team race battling Liverpool, Arsenal, City. How are you feeling about your club's chances this season?
Yeah, I think for both the men and the women, I think Arsenal are in a similar situation where it's ended up in a 3-team race. It was a bit of a 2-team race last year, which we were always kind of in, but everyone knew that a team wearing blue was actually going to win the league in both sides, both of the WSL and the Premier League. And then this season, there's 3 teams going for it. And again, I think if I was going to be putting a bet on it, I'd probably put Arsenal to finish third in both. I think in the men's, Liverpool and Man City are going to end up above. Not necessarily by 10 points or something like City were last year, but I think it'll be a bit closer. But yeah, I can definitely see. I don't know whether it's going to be City or Liverpool, but I don't think it'll be Arsenal, unfortunately. And then on the women's side, I think similar story. It's probably going to be City or Chelsea, with Arsenal having that third place. But it's just nice to be that little bit closer this year. Last year, it was always that inevitable. We're doing well, but we're going to get caught. We always have a bad run at the end of the season. We're going to get caught. And in 2 weeks' time, out of nowhere, we're going to be 10 points off the top. Whereas this year, we're just that little bit closer. I think with another team in it and putting another dynamic in, it makes it that bit more interesting. But yeah, I don't have overly high hopes for either.
And it doesn't, let me make sure before I speak. Yeah, we still have to face each other. City, Arsenal have to play each other one more time. City, Liverpool have to play each other one more time. That is actually very close. I
think that helps as well, having those matches where the teams have to play each other. I think last season we had a point where we played as in Arsenal, Man City played at about this time last year, February time, in the Premier League, and then it was Man City had quite an easy run in, and we still had teams like Liverpool, Man United to play against. Which, although if you're going to win the league, you should be able to beat those teams. It still makes it difficult. And we didn't we didn't come through it very well.
Yeah, the good thing is City play Arsenal, City play Liverpool. Liverpool beginning of March, Arsenal at the end of March. That still leaves 8 more matches to make something happen. Worst case, anything can happen in any of these matches. Yes, if City are able to beat Liverpool and Arsenal, it looks all done and dusted, especially with City's recent form at the end of the season. But I don't know, man. Anything's possible. I like the way that our club looks. They play great. We see what things are happening, but we've been having a lot of 1-0 wins and a lot of 1-1 draws, and where if teams are able to drop into that low block, it stops us. The good thing is, I don't think that's what we'll be facing when we play Liverpool, what we'll be facing when we play Arsenal. But those clubs are talented enough to not have to be in the low block. They can just play their football and give us trouble that way.
Yeah, I think that's what, especially with Arsenal, that's what's been our downfall versus Man City in the last few years for the men, that we've tried to, the last maybe 5 years, we've tried to just play the same way we always would against you, and it doesn't work because we haven't been good enough. Whereas now this year, players like Saka, Martinelli, Odegaard, they are of that quality that, they're just as good, if not better than some of the Man City players that start. So we can go out with that sort of attitude that, yeah, we can actually do this on our own. We don't need the sort of to sit back and defend, that we can actually be the team that goes forward.
Man, I know we're going to get to the stats eventually, but I love having Arsenal people on and trying to just pick their brain about this club, especially with this whole Saka thing. Man's, when is he ever going to get rested? Because the team brought in wingers that supposedly and have wingers in the background that could take his spot, but obviously the drop off is so large. Arteta is afraid to make that choice, and I know he's young. You can run your little heart out, but we're starting to see the niggles continuing and kind of getting worse and worse. So yeah. It's just like, what is your thoughts and how are you feeling about the whole?
I think he's going to be
playing all the time.
Yeah, he's going to be a player that's, I think, is going to not burn his energy out, but he's going to pick up so many little niggles and injuries and things like that. He's had a few times where I think he had something like 85 starts in a row, which was like the most that an Arsenal player has ever done in the Premier League. But there was a lot of those that he was getting taken off at 50, 60 minutes because he had a bit of a niggle. And, as long as we weren't a goal behind or something, Arteta's just like, okay, well, we can take him off now and just give him that bit more rest. Whereas Martinelli's great on the other wing. We're starting to see players like Trossard come through. Reece Nelson's getting a bit more minutes, things like that. But we haven't got anyone near that standard. Whereas you look at Man City, you've got players that can play in the middle and out wide in those positions. So you've got obviously Foden, Grealish, Doku, Bernardo Silva that can play on either wing pretty much, and are all fantastic, but can also play in the midfield or can also play, maybe in a false 9 position or something like that. Whereas we don't quite have that. I think the other thing that sort of goes a bit more in Arsenal's favour than Man City's actually is that reliance on a player in that holding role. I think Declan Rice has been a fantastic buy for us. I think he's been one of, if not our best player this year. But when he's out of the team, we can still get a good result. I think Man City struggle a bit more with lack of Rodri. I saw a stat.
1,000%. Yes.
Yeah, coming on to in the stats bit, I saw one that Rodri, the last time he lost a game was the start of February last year. For club or country, he just does not lose matches in any competition for anyone. And there was a spell, I think it was just before Christmas, where he was out for like 3 matches and you lost all 3.
Yeah, all 3.
And it just shows how much reliance there was on him, and just that he wasn't quite replaceable. And I know Pep actually changed the system around it, didn't he? Because he could have brought in Calvin Phillips, for example, but actually chose to start.
No one
I think it was Nunez and Silva as sort of a midfield partnership, which didn't really work. hence losing 3 matches on the trot. But then once Rodri comes back, it's then all guns blazing.
Back to normal, right? Yeah, it was jarring how obvious the team is, like how bad you can just see it. And Rodri does so many small things that you really do take it for advantage. It's not on a level of John Stones because his injuries keep him from like always being like there. But when John Stones returns, just him on the pitch, everything flows so much smoother. And it's very similar when Rodri's on the pitch. The ball just moves faster. The possession is held a little bit better. The passes seem a little less frenetic. It's just a lot. He does so many small things that really you can't even call it small, because obviously when we have them, we're literally undefeated. But when we don't have them, we can't win a match. It's insane.
I always tend to wonder if it's a bit like, I don't know if you've ever seen the quote with Peter Crouch talking about when he signed for Liverpool, and I think he was at Spurs beforehand. He was doing well. Liverpool have obviously signed him for a reason. And when he started at Liverpool at training sessions, if he took a bad touch or made a pass that wasn't quite hard enough or not quite to the player's feet, the sort of looks that he would get from people like Steven Gerrard, just to be like, that's not good enough. You need to be at this standard. I think sort of helped a lot of the team at Liverpool at that time, sort of 15 years ago, whatever it was, come up to the right standard. So it's the same players, but just playing better because someone like Gerrard's on the pitch. I feel like Rodri might have that sort of role at Man City, where the players just, when he's not there, they just relax that tiny little bit, and just, taking 5% off everything you do makes that difference.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. It's insane. It frustrates me actually, because it's just like, come on now, like why can't we make sense without him? Because he needs to be rested. We can't always start him. But now we understand why Pep always starts him, because we don't win without him. It's insane. It's insane. Let's get to the numbers then, shall we? Well, at least your origin story. Have you always been, I guess, interested in stats? How did you get into where you are, or at least love numbers and statistics enough where you're like, hey, I should make an account for this?
Yeah, so I've always liked watching football, especially the men's side, obviously, because it's had so much more traction, especially in the UK with the Premier League. But even other sports quite like tennis and Formula One, field hockey, you get a lot of stats come up, and I always enjoy the little ones of, the little niche ones that don't actually necessarily mean anything. They're not necessarily analytics. They're just little fun stats. I've always sort of enjoyed those things, but never really done too much with it. But I finished university a few years ago. I went into an analytics job for a car company. I now work at a bank doing an analytics job. So it's very much something that's within my wheelhouse, that sort of numbers and stats side. But yeah, I love sport generally. And I felt like there was a bit of almost a gap in the market. Like you said earlier, there's so many accounts that do this sort of thing for men's football, but there's just not really anything for the women's side
at all.
So yeah, well, I started my account, last summer, thinking I don't really know what I'm going to do with it, just sort of post some stats about football and see where it goes. And it's ended up being that people really enjoyed and appreciated the women's stats, sort of for women's football. I quite like women's football, and it's just become something that's sort of not taken over my life, but definitely something that I've taken a lot more interest in now. And yeah, really enjoyed it, and the interactions I get with people, and obviously getting to do nice little things like this tonight. So yeah, I just sort of started it as someone that likes numbers and data and also likes sport, and sort of in the middle of that Venn diagram, it came, let's make a account on Twitter and Instagram and see what people think about it. And
yeah, I love it.
It's growing, and it's growing every day.
As it should. Yeah, truly. I've become a big fan of it, and that's how I really knew that it was growing, because I would find random people just that I follow. All of a sudden I would see one of your stats, I actually, what really let me know you were out of here, there's a homie, I won't shout her out because she'll hate it, but she actually wasn't happy at all about one of your stats. And then she went on this diatribe, basically making fun of stats. And I loved it. And I was like, is that it doesn't matter what you do. It's always good to have someone react a certain way, whether it's like, I love it or I hate it. Because either way, like in the end, you just need to make someone feel something about what you're doing. And people felt in this moment, they felt very strongly about it. And I was just like, oh, that's great, especially because they have a reach for City when it comes to City women too. So I was like, yes, you're making fun of this stat, but you are now showing this, you're showing Sam off to so many people where they might not like this stat, but they'll go to your account and be like, oh, well, I like that. Oh, and that makes sense. Oh, and that makes sense. And then, so it's just like, love me or hate me, you're putting eyes on me.
Yeah, I think for me, it's almost like when something like that comes up, it's almost any publicity is good publicity.
Yes.
I'd much prefer people enjoy it, don't get me wrong, but you know, stats and numbers aren't for everyone. And I think, like I said sort of before we started, that you can look at stats all day, and I enjoy looking at numbers and finding out things that way, but you do need that sort of, you need to be able to watch the game as well and sort of see how players react to things. And there's little things that you can't get within data, even in the men's game where there's so many more sort of metrics and data points that get recorded. You can't get everything. You still need that human interaction. You can't just have a computer to tell you who's going to be the best player and who played well that game. You need the sort of human interaction to watch it as well. So I think stats are definitely something that sort of is an accompaniment to sort of analysing the game. It's not necessarily all of it, but for me, it's definitely an important part. I think for some, for some people, it's less important, and they see some of the stats, even things like XG, which I think is a relatively standard, commonplace stat now. See that as going too far and coming into the game and whatever.
I was actually going to ask you about that. Yeah, XG and XA. Like, what is? All right, maybe not even. I guess we can stay there. What is your general thought? Do you feel like that? Because I know so many people that are like, "This is such a stupid stat," and honestly, it just pisses me off most of the time, because I was like, the perfect example is City's match yesterday. We won 1-0. XG, I think it was like 2.48, but we only scored one goal. So it's just like, we're wastemen. We're like, oh, it's just frustrating when you see stuff like that where the XG doesn't match your scoring, or and so I guess how do you feel about XG and XA with assists? Do you feel like that's a stat that does well on its own, or is it one of those ones that is tied directly to like the eye test as well?
I think it's one that works really well on its own, but not necessarily on a really micro scale. So I think if you're looking at single shots or even sometimes single matches, so like you said, last night I had 2.48 XG, but only scored one goal. That sort of thing happens. It's not overly uncommon. So for example, if you had two shots in a game, both of them 0.5 XG, that's 1 XG obviously overall. But actually there's still a 25% chance that you won't score a goal because of how the statistics work. So there's a chance you're going to score more than one goal. There's 25% chance you're going to score two, but there's also a 50% chance you're going to score exactly one. So it's not to say that 1 XG means you will score one goal.
Yeah.
But I think when you look at it, for example, over wider terms, if you look at a team over a season, or looking at sort of like a rolling average of how they're doing compared to their XG, or even how much XG they're getting compared to how much XG they're allowing, so like their opponents get, I think you can start telling stories with it. So you can say about, for example, you can say Man City last night dominated Brentford, but overall, you might need to look back at the last 10 games and see actually have they been dominating teams consistently, and then you can start to put around it. So I think there's different ways that you can use the different types of stats and knowing what the stats are like and how they're produced helps you do that as well. But yeah, I think, like I say, you will always get people that won't like the stats. I think when in the kind of 80s or 90s, when assists were introduced as a concept, people hated it then because they were like, well, you're not scoring the goal. Why are you measuring that? Our like data and things has come in the last 30 years from that. There's so many different metrics now, and clubs and even media and things use it every day in such a specific way. And teams like Brentford's actually a very good example. They use it for their recruitment. Goes into games like FIFA and Football Manager, which we wouldn't be able to do without this kind of data. I think it's quite exciting to have those sort of points. XG is for me, it's that sort of good bridge between standard stat, like a goal or an assist or a corner, but not being too overly complex, like expected assists or something like that, where people need quite an explanation around it. I think XG can be that stat, kind of the branch point in the middle where people can understand it, and people that aren't like me and look at data every day, that they can actually still understand it and still get into learning a bit more about data and how it works that way.
I am that old school kind of guy where it's just like, I have my eyes and they work, and I've tried, but I've gotten a lot better at using stats more and just trying to, because I just hate how sometimes metrics are used to just make someone's argument correct, not necessarily like prove anything. They're just like, look at this number. I said this person is crap, and I found this one stat right here that proves that my one statement works. But it's just like, well, if you look at all these other things, it doesn't quite agree with your narrative. But it's interesting. So I'm really trying to embrace all of it. And
where wider picture helps as well. I know I was looking at something yesterday with Bunny Shaw and some of the stats within the league that she leads, so the things that she's best at. Obviously, she scored the most goals, but things like XG, etc. throughout that. But I can't remember exactly how many it was, but it was players that have taken over a certain number of shots, 30 shots or something. She actually gets the fewest of them on target. So she might take a lot. For people that take a lot of shots, she's actually not very good at getting them on target. But you could just come out with that stat and say, well, she's not a very good player. Whereas actually she's the top scorer in the league. She's probably one of, if not the best strikers in the world. So, yeah, there's one stat that doesn't go her way if you manipulate it in the right way and say players have to take this many shots, and then I'm going to measure this specific thing. But looking at a wider picture, you can see actually she's a great player, which is the sort of thing that backs up, I think, a lot of the time what people see with their eyes. You see that someone's a good player, and actually it's the stats almost prove what you're saying, rather than leading with the stats and then saying, well, this person's got a load of good numbers, therefore they must be a good player. You can also go the other way, I think, probably like you do a bit more, and say, well, this person's a really good player, and here's the numbers to prove it.
Yes.
It's not just me saying, it's not just my opinion, the fact.
and that's what I kind of try to do, is because everything is so opinion based and also hyperbolic. I try to support my takes and opinions and thoughts with numbers, and that's where I've started to use them more, where I'm just like, hey guys, because I find myself, especially here on the show, all the time being like, I'll say something and people are just like, oh no, and now like a few months later people are like, and like right now my whole thing, I've been bitching about Alvarez's playing time for at least a year now, and a lot of people were telling me that I needed to be quiet and it's silly, but now you're starting to see everybody they're turning it on Alvarez, and it's just like, I don't think you need to turn on him. He just needs rest like every player does, so his legs aren't hurting, his feet aren't hurting. Like, he's probably powering through because he's like, yeah, this is what I need to be now. But I'm sure once he gets that rest, he's going to realize how badly it was needed, and maybe that makes him a better footballer from there. But I'm very worried that, he just will play himself into the ground, and if he gets those injuries and they become just like constant, it terrifies me. There are just so many great young players in football that have been lost to injury.
Oh yeah, there's loads throughout the years. I think you go back 20 years or so, you get the famous ones like Michael Owen or R9, Ronaldo, that had a bad knee injury or something, and then were never quite the same when they came back. I think you're starting to see a bit of that come through the ladies' game as well, with ACL injuries. Seem to pop up every other day. So me officials have one.
Yes.
Alex Morgan's come in, most recent one. But yeah, I think Alvarez has played, I want to say he's the only City player to have played in every Premier League game this year, which you might expect if you're a goalkeeper or a centre-back or something, not necessarily as a 23-year-old sort of forward player.
supposedly the backup to Halan, but he's starting. It's just like, what? Why is he the backup, but he's starting all the time? It makes no sense. It makes no sense. It makes no sense.
Even when Haaland's in the team, he just plays sort of just behind him, doesn't he? Just alongside.
Just this little like shadow player like that.
Never
just
gets the rest.
passing the balls, trying to sneak it behind all those people. Yeah, it's kind of frustrating. All right, well, let's try this. Is there a stat that you love? Is there I guess it doesn't have to be even specific. Is there like a type of stat? But if you have a very specific one that you like love, or you feel like it tells the best story, what is that?
Yeah, I'm thankful that you asked me this question yesterday as well, so I could have a bit of time to think about it. Yeah, I was thinking yesterday afternoon about sort of what type of stats do I like the most and what sort of come out. I think the ones that I really like are the ones where only one person or one team holds the stat. So, it's not like X amount of players have scored over so many goals or something. That it's just one normally quite niche thing that's just done by one team, albeit quite impressive. So one that I wrote a couple down yesterday, one that I had to change was that until yesterday, Brentford were the only team that Haaland had played against in the Premier League but not scored against.
Yes.
Now he's scored against every team that he's played
against. Every team.
Ridiculous considering he's only been there a year and a half.
Yes, insane.
He was also found out this year he became the first player to score the first 2 goals in the season. So as in like across the league, he scored the first 2 goals. No player had ever done that before. Because Man City played on the Friday night before anyone else had. But yeah, some of the things like that just come out as a bit sort of people really standing out or teams really standing out. Then you also get the other sort of quite niche stats that aren't necessarily someone doing really well or something, but are just a bit random. So there's a few people that I follow on Twitter or X that are really good. There's a guy called Rich Jolly. There's a guy called Michael Cox. A guy called Duncan Alexander. I think they all sort of write for The Athletic or places like that. But they're all really good at coming out with really strange niche stats. So I saw one from Duncan Alexander that I saw yesterday. So 3% of the saves that Brentford goalkeepers have made in the Premier League, they've ever made in the Premier League, came in the first half against Man City yesterday.
Oh.
So Mark Flecker made so many saves in the first half. It was 3% of the saves that Brentford goalkeepers have ever made in the Premier League.
He was playing out of his head. He was playing on his head, but he's playing out of his mind. That's what I was trying to say. It was
absolutely
frustrating. So frustrating.
Also goes into what you said earlier about how much City dominated and having that 2.48 XG, but just not being able to score more than one. That it wasn't necessarily City being really wasteful. It was the keeper was having a really good game. I think another stat that I really love is one that I'd heard before, but the one from Liverpool of a few years ago. Do you remember they had their sort of famous midfield three of Fabinho, Henderson, Wijnaldum? They only actually ever started one game together. Those 3 players. There was always someone else, whereas Oxlade-Chamberlain or Keita or something. The only game they ever started together was the Champions League final where they won.
Wow.
Other than that, they never started a game, those 3, which, I found mad.
Wijnaldum, man. He was supposed to be like this huge cog in their midfield, and he couldn't stay on that pitch to save his life, his career, really.
They had a few like that. I don't even know where he is now. I know he's gone, but
yeah, I have no idea where he's at right now.
They tend to be.
Well, I asked you what are some of your favorites. Let's do the complete opposite on the other spectrum. What are some stats or types of stats where you're just like, I don't like those?
I think there's somewhere you don't quite get enough context. I think you probably find a lot of the stats that I do are sort of per 90 stats. I think that shows how good a player is for, equalized for everyone. So for every 90 minutes on the pitch on average, this is how much they do of whatever that stat is. So I find it quite annoying when people do those sort of stats per appearance because they just sort of don't add up. Because you can have some players like Alvarez is a good example, plays a lot of matches, but also gets subbed off a lot. So per appearance, that might only be 60 minutes on average for him. Whereas someone like Declan Rice, for example, often plays a full 90 when he plays. So his stats per appearance are going to look a bit worse than Alvarez's because Alvarez isn't on the pitch for as long. So things like that. I think, using the sort of per appearance statistic I find frustrating. The other one you don't see them too much. And normally if you do see them, especially on Twitter or X, that people just take the mick out of them straight away and say these are useless. The ones where people like really try and force a stat to try and make a player sound good. So things like the sort of classic one that I saw recently was, or saw again recently, was the pre-assists. So there's stats about people being involved in build-up. So that could be setting themselves up for a goal. That could be getting the assist. That could be, I think it's something within like the last 5 passes, or some places do it within the 10 seconds of a build-up, something like that. That's about right. The pre-assist, the assist to the assist, is normally one that's, I feel like, made up a bit too much, sort of forced into it to make a certain player look good or something like that. But generally, I think a lot of the stats that you see reported around are good. They're good. They sort of tell a good story. There's not a lot that frustrate me too much.
So, I just realized, because I looked up the term, because we talk about like the key pass, which I guess really is a pre-assist. It's the pass before the pass. And I was like, okay, what's the difference between those two? And I guess a key pass is basically assist that doesn't become a goal. And so I guess I need to talk to my team because we're using the word wrong. But I mean, I feel like that's also weird. Like,
kind of, because I think a key pass doesn't need to be something that sets up a goal. So you can have a key pass that goes into a player that, you know, someone might, I don't know, like a Rodri probably does a few of these where he makes a really good pass into someone like Grealish or Doku on the wing, and then they might end up losing the ball. So nothing actually comes from it, but it's still a key pass to get them into a great position. But you could also have a key pass that ends up being an assist itself.
Yeah.
I think that's quite a good stat because it shows the quality. It's a part of a really high quality. It's a bit subjective because it's just whoever's collecting the data decides whether it's key or not. But I think generally it's quite a good one because you can see, the person on the ball, whether they're, or even the team that's making them, whether they're making those really good passes, even if the next person that gets the ball doesn't do much with it, are they making a good quality pass? Is it key to the play? I think that's quite a good one still. I'd use that.
Yeah. I love, we're really big on it. And specifically because a lot, especially City specifically, they have a lot of those where it's, pass, we're going to switch real quick and then make a couple more passes and then there's a goal. And there's just always that one pass where you're just like, ooh, that was so sexy. And that's what I love about that. That's just what I love about football. It's just when the ball's moving and then there's just that one pass, and it doesn't have to be the assist. It's just, there's just always one pass in a moment where you're just like, oh, this is so nice. Makes you super happy. Get up and
it was lovely.
I guess
it was lovely as an Arsenal fan having Mesut Ozil at the club because he would just do those sort of things all the time, especially when he first joined and he was sort of still just about in his prime. He was great at doing those sort of things. I guess Man City have it a lot now with Bernardo Silva and Kevin De Bruyne. You get those sort of passes all the time where you're just like, he's just picked the exact right weight of the ball and the right sort of technique to use with his foot and things like that.
Yeah, it's the things that people are able to do with those footballs. It's truly insane. I love it so much.
I wish I could do.
1,000%. Well, I did ask for you to find. Actually, I want to start here. You gave a couple of quick names of some people, but who are some other people, and you can just repeat their names, what are some like websites that you enjoy using to find stats?
Yeah, so the websites that I tend to use are sort of the free ones. There are ones like Opta, for example, is a famous one that have really good in-depth stats, sort of more than 90% of people see, because a lot of this sort of stuff will get used by clubs, maybe even media sometimes, scouting departments, agencies, for specific uses. But being just a sort of friendly, this is a side project for me, sort of.
Yeah, of course.
Put loads of money into it. I don't subscribe to those. I don't even know how much they are. I don't think they're cheap. So I tend to use websites like SofaScore, FotMob, FBref to get sort of my data. And then I know with the stuff that I do with the WSL now, I tend to, once there's been sort of a round of matches, so, you know, they play over the weekend on the Monday morning, I'll go on to, like a site like FBref and just basically copy loads of the data into a spreadsheet and then not make stats up, but use the spreadsheet to facilitate the posts that I make. So yeah, it's partly nice that I've done that sort of thing at work already, being an analyst, and I've sort of got that skill set. But yeah, good that I can now put that into practice and actually have a sort of quite decent spreadsheet that I can go find stats that I can sort of work out that aren't necessarily on those websites. They're quite good as well, because things like FBref is a good example. They get their data from Opta and another company, I can't remember what it is, but two of those companies that you subscribe to data. So they'll pay however much their license fee is, put it on a website for free, and basically just get revenue from ads. So as long as you're clicking on the website, you get the data for free.
Brilliant. Man, and I know if I saw your spreadsheet and all of it would make my brain hurt, because I've never been good at any of those, and trying to set up the formulas and all that stuff. I've never been good at it. I've done so much research and I've tried so hard. I've learned at a very early age, try everything, but if it doesn't hit, then that's okay. You just make sure you have people who do enjoy those things, are talented in those things, so they can just help make your life easier.
Yeah, definitely that sort of thing. So like for my stuff, for example, I'm quite lucky with the spreadsheet stuff that it's just kind of how my brain works, and I'm quite lucky that it just sort of kind of comes naturally that I can use those sort of things. Whereas when it came to making the posts, especially the graphics that I do, so like the graphs and things like that, I can make a graph, but I can't necessarily make it look good on a post and things like that. But my girlfriend's really good at that sort of thing, with sort of graphic design and that kind of thing. So she helped me design a lot of it. So I've sort of got a sort of a template that she's made, and then I sort of work around that to make the post every time. Nice. So yeah, it's one of those things that if I was just doing that on my own, it would look a bit rubbish. If I think you go on the go on my Instagram and sort of scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll see some of the old graphs that I used to make before I used the color scheme I've got now, and they don't quite look as good and as clean and things like that as they do now. But yeah, it's one of those that it's just you work to your strengths, don't you?
Exactly. Because I did ask for you to find some Man City based stats, and I don't really care what they're about. Could be good, could be bad, but I would love to see, how you see it, how you see football, and what stats maybe intrigue you.
Yeah, so I was having a look yesterday about some of the stats that sort of come up on my spreadsheet. So especially around Man City in the WSL. Obviously, that's the sort of area that I focus on the most. And I think from a team that's, barring goal difference, joint top of the league, you wouldn't be surprised to hear that there's a lot of things that Man City are top for, and a lot of things where the players are top for. So, for example, Bunny Shaw comes top of pretty much any goal scoring stats, whether that's goals, whether that's shots on target, XG, goal creating actions, touches in the box, things like that you'd associate with being a goal scorer. That tends to be the things that she's leading the league on. Similarly, someone like Chloe Kelly, she leads a load of things that are the more creative stats. So things like crosses, key passes, touches in the attacking third, shot creating actions, passes into the box. What are the ones I write down? The expected assists per 90, progressive carries, progressive passes received. That's always one that I think is a bit of an underrated stat. People have heard generally of progressive passes, but no one really thinks about progressive passes received, which sort of shows that players are often in the right areas. If you hadn't seen anything from Chloe Kelly this season, you didn't really know who she was, you could sort of say those stats to people and say, she's really good at progressive carries, receiving passes, making key passes, touches in the attacking third, putting crosses in. You could probably work out she's a winger. You could probably work out she gets a lot of assists. you could probably work out that whoever's up front gets a lot of goals, and you can sort of paint a bit of a picture just from those numbers. Further back on the pitch as well, there's some stats. I say some, quite a lot, that are led by Alex Greenwood in terms of possession. So I think probably should have researched this as well, but I think Man City have the second best possession in the league, not far behind Chelsea. And those two are quite a way ahead of everyone else. So it's probably, unsurprising that your main distributor, Alex Greenwood, has a lot of metrics where she leads. So things like the number of passes made, the distance those passes have been, the number of carries she's got, the number of touches within the middle third of the pitch, the distance she carries the ball. One that I find quite interesting generally is, and I've posted about quite a lot, is on-pitch goals and on-pitch goals against. So this is the number of goals a team scores or concedes while a specific player is on the pitch. So I found that with Alex Greenwood, she's really high. So looking at players that have played at least 8 matches, or the equivalent of 8 matches, so 720 minutes, on average, Man City score 3.1 goals while she's on the pitch in a match, which is pretty good. There aren't many teams that score 3 goals every match. She's obviously missed a few matches, whether it's injury or some questionable red cards. But 3.1 goals while she's on the pitch is pretty good. When she's on the pitch, they only, on average, concede 0.4 goals a game, which is obviously really low. Man City have actually only conceded 8 goals this season. I think 2 of them were when Greenwood was
Arsenal.
on.
Yep.
So 0.4 is really low. And then, so she has the highest in the league. That 3.1 is the highest. That 0.4 is also the lowest in the league, which therefore means that her 2.7, the difference. So on average, when Alex Greenwood is playing, Man City will win a game by 2.7 goals.
Ooh, that's strong. See, man, all of these stats now, I would love to. I want to see, and I hate to do this to them, but I would love to see Lauren Hemp, her numbers compared to Kelly's, especially with the rumor that Hemp is leaving. And obviously going to Barca, you have a chance to win multiple trophies every season. Champions League is pretty simple compared, because you don't have to play in or beat Chelsea and Arsenal and all these other things.
Yeah, you just sort of know that you're going to get a good result.
But I feel like, because Gareth, he hinted that Nils gave her a really good offer, but maybe was it? And if they aren't, maybe it's something that they're getting data wise that says, because the eye test, Lauren Hemp is amazing. Like truly, there are players that we lost these last couple of years where I was like, okay, cool, we're fine. I don't quite know what we're gonna do, but we're fine. I think losing Hemp is obviously Mary Fowler. That's going to give her a chance to ball out. There are players that are going to be able to step up and take over, but I don't know if they just haven't been able to do it yet. And like Hemp is never really rested or benched. It's just the idea of someone coming in and taking her spot just kind of terrifies me.
Yeah, I think Chloe Kelly's the saying that it'd just be so hard to replace.
Yes.
So I think I've seen rumors as well of Chloe Kelly going to, I don't know how far they got. It was sort of thing that I saw about a month ago, and I've not seen anything since. But of her going to Paris in the summer.
And Paris is a hot mess right now. So this is also what shakes me up. Yes, yep. Yeah, because there's also Paris SG. Yes. It's been super frustrating because every year I'm like, this has to stop. We have to stop losing players. And yes, only losing 1 player as opposed to 3 or 4 players. And then even last season, losing 2 players. Just losing 1, that's better. But I would just love to retain players. Yes. What would it be like if we just kept an entire team for a season? Let's test that out one day. Manchester City women.
I think that would help so much with moving on to the next step for Man City, because obviously the women won the league in, was it 2017, something like that. and it's basically just been Chelsea dominant since.
Yeah.
And I think Man City are at a point this season where I don't know what the odds are from the bookies, but it's probably something around evens between Man City and Chelsea that it's kind of anyone's guess who's actually going to end up winning the league. But also going to that next step as well, Chelsea is starting to go quite far in Champions League consistently, getting to the semi-finals at least. And that's the sort of thing that Man City will look to want to do in the future. And I think if you let your best players go every year, you can't do that. I don't think Man City need to be sort of a selling club. You don't need to sell players to make profit. You've got the money, really, haven't you? Obviously, there is some sort of, you don't want to just take the mick and spend every penny you've got and destroy the football for everyone. But at the same time, you should be able to still retain players and pay them the money they deserve. I think at the moment, Man City's, for a player, is a really attractive place to be. They're on the up. It's really nice facilities and things like that. I think the Joy Stadium is something that might hold players back a little bit, while other teams, Arsenal are playing at the Emirates a lot, Chelsea playing at Stamford Bridge a lot, that kind of thing. Man City don't really seem to be playing at the Etihad. I think that's something that
they're doing it for the Manchester Derby, but it's maybe one match a season, 2 matches a season, and I could have sworn last year they said that they wanted to do at least like 4, but I think this will be the first one this season. I could be wrong, but I'm almost positive this will be the first match at the Etihad for City women, which isn't okay. I think it needs, especially to grow like they say they want to, it needs to do it, because even at Emirates always sells out, but it's London, and I think that's kind of what it is like it's London, because when they play at Stamford Bridge, it doesn't always sell out. They give a lot of tickets away, and so I know they get a little weird about that sometimes. So
Chelsea have also got the issue with policing on it as well. So if they have over 5,000 people in the stadium, Chelsea have to pay for all the police and shutting the roads and things like that around. So they need to make it 30,000 plus to actually make it viable to do. If you're going to get 8,000 people in, you may as well cut it back and just have 5,000. But it's also one where somewhere like Kings Meadow that Chelsea play, or Brentwood that Arsenal play, is just not as nice as the Joy Stadium. So for a women's stadium, Man City is actually really good, which I think is part of the reluctance to move any of the matches over. But
I think so too.
It would just be nice if a few more matches were at the Etihad. I saw today as well with obviously Ineos took over Man United. That's sort of gone through now. One of the things Jim Ratcliffe had said is that they're looking to build a new stadium for Man United men, and they'll also be renovating Old Trafford as well. Not completely, but I think they'll be reducing the capacity of it, but at least tidying it up and fixing the leaky roof and things like that, with the intention of that being the home ground for the women's team.
Which that would be great. That would be good, because they need to keep Old Trafford and history and all that stuff. But if you give it to the women, can we make sure that the bathrooms don't flood and there's not a leaky roof and things like that? I feel like that's
imagine they probably won't do that, but they'll still do it. But I think that's sort of the right step for football generally, that teams are not necessarily having to share their pitches, men's team, because it doesn't. It's better than just playing at the sort of smaller grounds. But ideally, you'd like to have a bit of a bigger stadium, wouldn't you? Just to, if you had the men's team and the women's team had their own really big stadium, that's ideal. And I think that's a stage that, personally, I think in 20 years' time or so, I think you'll get to that point, at least within the UK, where, teams will have big stadiums for the women's team, as well as the men's team. It's just getting there.
Yeah, exactly.
I was just, while we were chatting as well, I was just having a look at that, like you said about those stats for Chloe Kelly and for Lauren Hemp, alongside the one that I came up with Alex Greenwood. So, I said that when Alex Greenwood was on the pitch, City win by 2.7 goals on average. So that's top of the league. Chloe Kelly is on 2.2 while she's on pitch. So that's 5th in the league. Lauren Hemp is 13th with 1.9. behind a few Chelsea players and Victoria Palova as well. So she's that a little bit lower down, which could just be that she's not got the same sort of output that Chloe Kelly has, which from the stats...
No, she doesn't.
But it could also be the sort of matches that she plays. I haven't looked into it, but it could be that the sort of matches that Lauren Hemp gets prioritised in could be the big matches, whereas Chloe Kelly might miss out on. Whereas Lauren Hemp might miss out on something like Bristol City or West Ham, where you're not going to get much luck. Where you're going to get a lot of luck. She's actually harder to get chances.
And Hemp's biggest thing is, when she dribbles, she's watching the ball. That's her biggest problem. Is she just you see her brain thinking, and sometimes like she's going to get her goal before she passes. Whereas Chloe Kelly's the other way. She will pass before she tries to get her own goal.
Yeah.
I think maybe that's why we're getting rid of him, because we have Roard. We have all these other ballers who can facilitate goals, and we need more people to feed Bunny.
I think Jess Park's been looking really good. She's obviously Roard out.
We call her Spark. Jess Park.
I think Kelly works really well in Man City's system, where they just want to be whipping crosses in, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Hemp, I think the best I've seen her play was at the World Cup, where she played with Russo as a front two in sort of that 3-5-2 formation England kind of played. I thought she was really good at that, because she basically just used her pace rather than having to sort of whip crosses in or get on the end of crosses type thing. It was more about running past players, which is exactly what she's really good at. I think it's kind of a system thing where she just doesn't fit in the system, and Man City aren't going to change the system to get less out of Kelly and Shaw to get more out of Hemp. So if she's probably, she's 23? Something like that.
Yeah, she's very young, yeah.
Very good player. She's probably going to get a bit better if someone like Barcelona is going to come in and offer a lot of money for her. Why not?
Exactly.
Perfect time to sell. Stock's high.
Well, I have nothing more for you, and honestly, it's always good to just leave a little bit on the bone. Don't eat all the apple, because it gives you incentive to come back, because we would love to have you back. You're officially part of Shady Gang now. That's what we call our family, Shady Gang. So please, I would love for you to plug yourself. Let Shady Gang, the listeners, know how they can find you and the things that you do on social media.
Yeah, so my name on any social media that I'm on is @Statistician. I currently do probably 5 to 10 posts a day on Twitter, X, and I was trying to post at least something every day on Instagram as well. They're the main two places to get me at the moment. Stay tuned, because I'll probably end up doing something else. I might be doing something like YouTube or TikTok, or maybe my own podcast or something in the future. But it's growing, so I'll be growing with it. I don't really know what it's going to come to, but come join me on the journey.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Shady Gang, we will see you all tomorrow for our lit stream, our most dope show. We bring 3 guests on for 15 to 20 minutes, and we just banter about football. Not all of them are City fans. In fact, only one is a City fan normally. So it just gives our show a chance to get outside of our City bubble, which is nice. Connect with some people that aren't specifically City. So we'll see you tomorrow night for that, live on FanFest Live. If you haven't checked out our newest episode that dropped a couple days ago, check that out. We'll see you soon. You know the vibes. Shady Gang, Shady Gang, Shady Gang.